No snogging under the mistletoe is allowed this year after Cabinet Minister Therese Coffey warns people against a festive romance this Christmas.
It comes after the Prime Minister claims no rules were broken, but doesn't deny there was a boozy Downing Street Christmas party last year. We're joined now by the Science Minister, George Freeman. Talking about freedom, in fact. Very good morning to you. I'm really struck by the comments we're getting this morning, particularly on the back of the 1 million minutes campaign. Lots of people feeling like they've lost out on social contact and are worried about what's going to happen this Christmas. Particularly when we know that last Christmas, these parties were held at number 10. Why were parties allowed to go ahead at number 10 last year when we were in lockdown or we were facing restrictions on meeting indoors? Everybody else was trying to stick to the rules. Why didn't they stick to the rules there?
Well, thank you. Good to be with you. Can I just congratulate you? The Million Minutes campaign is brilliant. I may be the Minister for Science, but I'm also the MP for Mid-Norfolk. And, you know, elderly folk around, particularly in rural areas, loneliness is a real issue. And everybody giving a bit of time to support those who are isolated is hugely important. So, brilliant work. Look, I'm really here today because we're announcing another major package of investment in life science. 9 billion has come in from the private sector in the last 3 years. We've announced another 5 billion and a big summit today on vaccine science for tomorrow. But your question is a really important one. In the end, the science and the vaccine programme, UK leadership in the rollout, we've led the world in defeating this virus and continuing that work. The pandemic is ongoing. But people, in the end, the vaccine programme means that people can have a bit more freedom. But we've all got to exercise that freedom responsibly. That's why we've changed the guidance in light of the Omicron variant.
Was the Prime Minister being responsible last Christmas when he allowed these parties to go ahead?
Oh, well, look, I wasn't there. I've been in government 6 weeks. I was nowhere near number 10 a year ago. I can absolutely assure you that number 10 staff follow the guidance. And, I mean, I can't tell you who was in the room or what happened. I wasn't there, but I've checked before coming on, and I'm told very clearly that the guidance was followed. And you make an important point.
From the outside, regardless of that, can you understand from the outside why it looks like, you know, everybody outside number 10 was adhering to very different rules and regulations, that they may well have been following the guidance as they interpreted it, but it doesn't look like that. You can appreciate that people can see that, and the viewers that we're getting in this morning, and you've talked about the importance of the Million Minutes campaign from your own constituency. Yeah. You know, Noreen, my 93-year-old dad had vascular dementia. He was in a care home. We were not allowed to see him because of lockdown. He passed away in June last year. It's heartbreaking. He passed away without his family. RG, my mother died alone in a care home on the 19th of April 2020, the same time Dominic Cummings had his eyes tested. Boris Johnson supported him. I will never forgive him. Last Christmas, while Johnson was having a jolly up at number 10, I was having a Zoom call with a nurse and a doctor telling me my wife's father had just died of COVID and we couldn't visit. And yet Boris Johnson was having, apparently, a party within the rules. Can you understand why our viewers are so angry about this morning, despite what number 10 is saying?
Yeah, I totally understand that people around the country expect that when we make sacrifices, we all make them. And look, I can't get drawn into who or what wasn't in whichever room in number 10 last year. I'm only been in government 6 weeks and I was nowhere near the building. But your point is important. People need to understand that if we're making sacrifices, we're all making them together. Yes. And the point I wanted to make is, you asked me about the guidance, and this Christmas, we've changed the guidance to try and maintain the freedoms for people to enjoy some time together so that families, communities, and yes, businesses, I'm a business minister, can come together. So we're saying face masks on public transport, face masks in shops, so that people can eat and drink, and we support our hospitality sector. You can't eat and drink in a face mask. In the end, we're trying to create a framework where, with the science and the vaccine rollout, and I'm delighted to confirm that all 18-year-olds will be getting their booster jab by the end of January, we're leading the world in both vaccine rollout and in the science of investing in making sure that we can defeat any new variants. But we've also got to make sure that because of that, people can have some freedom and then use it responsibly. This isn't a nanny state. We're not trying to tell everyone who you should or shouldn't see, or businesses make their decisions.
Whether you call it a nanny state or not, you have told people what they can and can't do. And that is the point about last year. And we're very specifically talking about if you want people to follow the rules, Everybody has to follow them.
Yeah, that's very important.
And if we want people to follow them this year, we need to know that the Prime Minister and the staff at Number 10 followed them last year.
Yeah, that is very important. I can't answer your question about who was in the room and what happened. I wasn't there. But you make an important point, which I'm agreeing with. People need to see that sacrifices are being shared. And the Million Minutes campaign speaks to something very important. The pandemic has hit us all, but it's particularly hit the most vulnerable in our community. In my rural constituency, incomes aren't high. Many elderly people have really suffered through this. And it is very important that all of us are fair.
Ms Freeman, you've said that you can't talk about who was there. Have you asked them? Have you asked someone to explain what happened? Because, as you say, you've just been in government in the, for a very short period of time. It's the first time I think we've met you on this show, and it's great to have you come and talk to us this morning. But assume, as you are up front and centre this morning, you've said, look, can someone explain who was in the room and what the details were?
Yeah, actually, I'm not interested in who was in the room. I'm interested in your point. Was the guidance followed? Because the public want to know that when government ministers set out guidance, we then follow it. You may be interested in who was kissing who under the mistletoe, I understand, but I'm more interested in the point that you're making about guidance and making sure it was followed. That's the question I've asked, and I've been assured the guidance was followed. And I can't get drawn into who or who wasn't in the room and who had which cocktail. You'll understand I wasn't there. But you make a really important point, which I'm trying to support, that in the end, when we in government have to ask people to make real sacrifices, as we've had to do through this pandemic, it must be fair to people that everyone is taking those sacrifices. And
yes.
I'm here today as Science Minister because we're gathering today here in Downing Street digitally, so we don't spread the virus, global leaders to announce a £500 million package in the next phase of vaccine science. And this is important because if we can lead in defeating the virus, then we don't have to impose such strong restrictions. And the reason Britain is now able to be a more open society, still some restrictions, but more open than other countries, is because of the incredible success of our life science strategy, private and public working together.
When can we book those booster doses? You mentioned by the end of January, all over 18s will have been offered their booster. But when does that actually happen? I went online this morning onto the app to try and book a booster for an over 18-year-old, and the information still says you are not eligible and 5 months, you have to wait 5 months. But we've all heard Prime Minister say it's going to be reduced to 3 months.
Yeah, so the NHS is, and let's pay tribute to their work. Their winter is always a tough time. The NHS runs very hot. This year they've got a massive pandemic backlog to clear. They're heroes, and they're trying to make clinical judgments in communities about the most urgent treatments. And in the end, that's the right way to do it. We've made the commitment. We've bought the 114 million extra vaccine doses, so the supplies are there. But we have to be led by the NHS on daily judgments, weekly judgments about how to prioritise. It's very important that we get all the 18-year-olds jabbed, and we've set the target by the end of January. But it's also important that elderly
it's
people...
It's important that they can get the jab, because the point that Susanna's making that you still haven't answered is that she tried to book it for someone who's over 18, and yet it's saying you've got to wait 5 months. When is the infrastructure going to be... When is the infrastructure going to be in place that you can book?
It's in place. The NHS is running it. It's today is you go online, you register to the app, and then the NHS tells you when you're eligible. And that is the right way to do it. We don't want everybody ringing up the GP practice. They're trying to deal both with this public health crisis and the backlog of people who really need treatments for other things like cancer.
All right.
So the NHS will contact us when the local surgery and the local distribution centre can provide those jabs. But everyone will be done by over 18 by the end of January.
OK, so don't try and do it via the app. Wait until you're contacted. All right, George
do it via
Freeman.
the app, and then it'll contact you. That's the point. And do it online.
All right. We're going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid. That's the Science Minister, George Freeman.